So when meditation is a question, can you meet whatever is arising with kindness? And I kind of mean kindness in a sloppy, unspecific way. We can think about the 4 Brahma viharas. Is there anyone in this room who's never heard the term Brahma viharas? Okay, awesome. Please allow me to tell you. So, the historical Buddha taught these 4 heart states that he felt were really important to the practice and to being a good human, being a flourishing human. And it's funny that we don't hear a lot about this kind of stuff in school, but I guess you get what you, as a society, what you want. These 4 wholesome heart states, according to the Buddha, were the optimal way of being, the optimal kind of psycho-emotional way of functioning in the world. And they are loving kindness, compassion, joy at the joy of others, and equanimity. So loving kindness on a spectrum, all the way from just basic friendliness, like I'm sure you've seen this when you see a little baby see another baby at the grocery store or the restaurant, and they're just like, it's the most interesting thing in the whole room. Babies are like, hey man, they're just instant. And they're kind of like just baseline friendliness. Like when I'm not all tied up and having a bad day, how I feel about seeing other humans alive. I'm like, hey. So, and this doesn't just go for other humans, right? You could meet your experiences in your life with friendliness. You could meet the ongoing vicissitudes of your precious human life with kindness. Just doesn't mean you have to like it, but here it is. You broke your arm, you got the flu, whatever it is. Can you meet this with kindness, just like we're sitting on the cushion? So that's loving kindness. Also, in the Pali language, the word is metta, M-E-T-T-A. And then the second of these wholesome heart states is compassion. And this could be all the way from, and I think we in the West have a pretty good idea of what compassion means. The Latin compassio means to suffer with. So everybody who sees someone else suffering knows what that feels like. Like, I might not have your specific brand or flavor, but I know what that feels like. I know what it is to be angry, to be sad, to be hurt, to be jealous, to have misfortune befall me. And compassion, according to the Buddha, is what happens when an open heart meets the suffering of another. You don't turn away. You don't other that person. Well, that happened to you because you're a bad person, or you made bad choices, or ... We have this interesting kind of two-step that we often do where we see misfortune happen to another and we're like, that won't happen to me. But compassion immediately brings us to the platform of solidarity. We're like, actually, I know what that's like, or that could be me. And in the same way of loving kindness, where it applies to people as well as to conditions, situations, etc., compassion goes from people, the misfortune of people, to the suffering of yourself. How often do we turn away from our own suffering? Like, oh, God. It's just like my mom said. It's typical, that we do this whole weird dance. We're like punishing ourselves instead of just meeting, this hurts. I don't like this. This is painful. And again, circumstances in our life we don't like. Can we meet that? Can we be available to it? And it seems like that's the specific flavor of compassion, is availability. And then joy at the joy of others. It could be like, again, as specific as something good happened for someone. That's awesome. Good for you. Instead of what often can be the case is like, you certainly don't deserve that. Or why didn't it happen to me? Or maybe this is just me. That's terrible. But think of the expansion of heart that can come with that, where we cultivate joy at the joy of others. And for those of you playing at home or writing this down, I didn't say the Pali word for compassion. The Pali word for compassion is karuna, Karuna. And the Pali word for joy at the joy of others. Again, isn't that funny? You've probably heard the word Schadenfreude, right? German word meaning like happiness at the misfortune of others. There's no word for the opposite in German. And there's certainly no word for the opposite in English. We have to have a whole bunch of words. Joy at the joy of others. Too bad we don't have a word for that. But yeah. And then the final is equanimity. And you could think of equanimity as like the steady hand on the wheel of the ship. Equanimity is the ability to be balanced in the face of the inevitable ups and downs in our lives. Equanimity is the adult in the room. And equanimity keeps us from being partial, overly partial. Like you can imagine people get compassion fatigue, happens all the time. People who volunteer a lot or in situations where they're caring for others, it can absolutely wreck you. Teachers, doctors, nurses, etc. Equanimity is this kind of balanced understanding that there'll be this and there'll be that. It's like the balance point. It's like being able to surf instead of getting thrown about by the waves. And the word for that in the Pali language is upekkha. 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 And in the Pali, it's really interesting because upekkha means in the middle. So it's like, it's not removed. It's not like hands off, like, well, that sucks for you. It's, you're at the balance point. So the words Brahma Vihara, which is the kind of the title for these, is a Pali phrase that means divine abodes. You know, think of abode like a house. So the divine abode for all of these is the heart. So this is like this divine place where these beautiful qualities live. And the idea from the Buddha, and this is important, is that these are actually innate to us, just like attention, just like concentration, just like the Buddha awareness that is within all of us. These are innate. They just get covered over or forgotten or obscured or nobody ever told you about it. You can contact them, you can develop them. So, for the Buddha, this cultivation of these wholesome heart states is absolutely crucial to development on the path of practice. And you can imagine that there are probably lots of people in the world who can study meditation to be a better hedge fund manager, think about ancient Japan. Lots of samurai studied Zen. You can practice meditation to be a better killer. You can remove these practices from their moral framework. Totally. But they really flower. They really can flourish in your life when they are part and parcel of this whole framework. In fact, loving kindness and compassion for me were the jet fuel for my practice. As somebody who's never been a very good or a very diligent meditator, cultivation of these heart states was very intuitive and powerful, and continue to be so. And it's interesting to me that as the years go on, I find less and less difference between cultivation of attention, sensory clarity, mindfulness, and just simple cultivation of kindness, compassion, etc., etc. So, that being said, this is the time of the night when we see if we can, or we practice directly contacting, meeting, activating these states. And the two at the top of the list, you can see how they're two sides of the same coin, right? Metta and karuna, kindness and compassion. Kindness is just like, I want to be happy. I know you want to be happy. May I be happy. May all beings be happy. Hey, Bob, I hope you're happy. Have a good day. Hey, stranger, have a good day. Hey, self, have a good day. And then compassion. Oh, I'm sorry you're not having a good day. I know what that feels like. I'm sorry. So just by way of kind of settling in the body, and again, it's kind of like the same question. Can you meet what is arising with kindness and compassion, with friendliness and availability? I invite you to see if holding that in your mind can begin to have a flavor. Can you feel it in your body, even just contemplating? What would it feel like to hold myself in kindness and compassion? And what might that practically mean for me? Well, for starters, what if you could hold yourself in a way where there is no critique or caveat or conditionality? What if you could hold yourself in warm, open, friendly availability? The way an ideal parent or mentor or caregiver would. With each breath, hold yourself in that kind spaciousness. And by way of arousing this kindness and compassion, I invite you to notice your breath and maybe even imagine that the breath is flowing into and flowing out of your heart center. This warm, beautiful energy. And if you like, at a time of your choosing. Silently in your heart of hearts, I invite you on the out-breath to vibrate this simple phrase within your heart. May I be happy. Just see how it feels. And I invite you to repeat these simple phrases after me. And they have a sound, and they have a meaning. And you can even imagine the sound vibration resonating from you and spreading through the room, spreading through this world. May I and all beings be happy and safe from harm. May I and all beings be happy and safe from harm. May I and all beings be healthy in body and in mind. May I and all beings be healthy in body and in mind. May I and all beings be peaceful and free of suffering. May I and all beings be peaceful and free of suffering.